There is a lot to be done, and as followers of Jesus, we are the ones that have to do it. So let's go out and help heal the world. Our gospel lesson this morning comes from the 13th chapter of the Gospel of Luke. One Sabbath, Jesus was teaching in a synagogue, and there was a woman there possessed by a spirit that had crippled her for 18 years. She was bent double and quite unable to stand up straight. When Jesus saw her, he called her and said, "You are rid of your trouble." And then he laid his hands on her, and all at once she straightened up, and she began to glorify God. But the president of the synagogue, indignant with Jesus for healing on the Sabbath, intervened, and he said to the congregation, "There are 6 working days. Come and be cured on one of them, and not on the Sabbath." Jesus gave him his answer. "What hypocrites you are," he said. "Is there a single one of you who does not loose his ox or his donkey from the manger and take it out to water on the Sabbath? And here is this woman, a daughter of Abraham, who has been bound up for 18 long years. Was it wrong for her to be freed from her bonds on the Sabbath?" At these words, all of his opponents were covered with confusion, while the mass of the people were delighted at all of the wonderful things that Jesus was doing. I had the great good fortune to study in the Middle East my senior year of college, primarily in Jerusalem. I took coursework in Judaism and Islam and the history of Christianity, and a lot of study of the biblical context, spending most Saturdays visiting archaeological sites and present-day cities to study the biblical stories and the events that took place there. I lived in the old city, the old walled city, about 1 square mile, with narrow alleys for streets, no room for motorized vehicles, nothing larger than a cart. To get to the building where I had my classes, I had about a short 8-minute walk from the hostel where I lived through the markets and alleys of the old city, past the Palestinian shopkeepers selling their fruits and their vegetables or their wares. The culture of hospitality was always present. They would shout out, "U.S., U.S., come, come, welcome, have some tea, have some tea." Stray cats would seemingly be wandering everywhere you looked. The exotic smells of the spices for sale waffled through the air, while 5 times a day, the minarets would wail out their chant, "Allahu Akbar, God is great," calling the faithful Muslims to prayer. They would stop whatever they were doing and kneel and pray. As I neared my classroom each day, one sight would invariably catch my eye. An elderly blind man, standing each day on the opposite side of the often crowded alley, dressed in what was surely once elegant attire, a black cap and black vest, but now very worn and tattered, a gray beard, holding out his tin cup, begging for small change or for whatever a passerby could spare. I always felt uncomfortable as I passed him. I'd always scoot to the other side of the alley and avert my gaze, as if I could avert the gaze or avoid the gaze of a blind man. And then I'd hurry on and quickly forget about him, go to class, and go on with my day. Well, 4 years later, fortune smiled on me again, and I had the opportunity to return to Jerusalem for another semester, this time as a graduate student. Although this time I lived in a different part of the city. I lived in West Jerusalem, in Israel proper, having lived in the occupied territories the first time around, 4 years later. And one of the reasons I did this is I was trying to rebalance my pro-Palestinian leanings, having had Palestinian neighbors the first time around. And this was something, by the way, I was wildly unsuccessful at doing. But you can imagine my excitement to have the opportunity to again visit my old neighborhood in the old city, to walk the same alleys and smell the smells, to visit the hostel where I'd lived, to see if my Palestinian friends were still there. I was fairly bouncing down the street my first time in the old city, soaking in the aromas, flooded with memories, thrilled with the energy and the sights and the sounds, just absorbed in nostalgia. When as I'm making my way down the narrow alley, I rounded the corner, and lo and behold, standing in the same place was the same blind man, standing there holding out his tin cup. 4 years had passed. I'd had 4 years of study and growth, and 4 years of travel and adventures, 4 years of birthday parties, 4 years of Christmas mornings, 4 years of good conversations with friends, 4 years of family gatherings around the table. And this man's daily life stood before me, his daily routine of standing and begging all day long. Here I was in what is known as the Holy Land, immersed in the biblical context, visiting the sites where the stories of Scripture took place. And I could tell you a lot of stuff. I learned a lot of stuff while I was there. I could tell you about the heroism of the ancient Jewish people and their last stand at Masada. Or I could tell you how important a reliable water source was to how the land was settled, and then later how it was reconquered by different empires. Or I could tell you just how rough the terrain was on the road to Jericho, making the Good Samaritan's actions all the more remarkable and courageous because it was so dangerous what he did to go out of his way to bind up the wounds of that man by the side of the road. Or I could tell you about Bethel or Ai or Caesarea Philippi or blah, 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 blah. Blah. I was acquiring all this knowledge, but when a real live human being with a real need was standing right in front of me, I was staring face to face with my own hypocrisy. I'd walked right by the same blind man every day, again and again, and I'd ignored him. I pretended I didn't see him. Here I was, living in the land where Jesus walked the earth, and I realized that I'd learned very little about how to actually walk in the way of Jesus. In today's gospel passage, the religious leaders of the synagogue where Jesus is preaching knew the law, they knew the rules, they knew a lot of stuff, and I think they thought they knew everything. So they quoted the law back to Jesus, and they protested and called Jesus out when he tried to heal on the Sabbath. I think Jesus must have heard it as just noise. Do you remember all the Peanut specials that were on TV, like a Charlie Brown Christmas? Yeah. You didn't often see the adults in those specials because Peanuts is all about the children. But whenever the adults entered the room, you wouldn't actually hear their voice. What you'd hear is the sound of a muted trumpet. Wah, 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 wah. Do you remember? I think that's what the synagogue leaders' protest sounded to Jesus. Just like noise, worthless noise. Jesus said to them, "You can boast about all your knowledge of the law, but I don't care about your rules about healing on the Sabbath. This woman has been ill for 18 years. You think you know so much, quoting me the religious law. You hypocrites. You break the laws all the time. Find me a law and I'll show you when you've broken it." And Jesus is also saying that there is never a reason to delay showing a person mercy or to show kindness or to be about the work of healing in the world. Mother Teresa, in the middle of being interviewed once, maybe she was tired of being asked a lot of questions, but Mother Teresa once said that the answer to every question is compassion. Think about that. Again, the answer to every question is compassion. Pretty good, I think. And I would say that the things that we know in our minds, in our heads, the information we hold, they aren't really worth that much. They're just thoughts. And thoughts come and go. They pass through your mind. And there's always going to be more that you don't know than you know. Always. And when it comes to the life of faith, so much is unknowable. The great majority of it is unknowable. It's mystery. Jesus is telling these synagogue leaders who questioned his breaking the Sabbath law, and he is reminding us that what you think you know, the facts, the information, is never going to be as important as how you live your life and whether you live a life of compassion. As you go about your lives, maybe you've seen the equivalent of the blind man that I walked by in Jerusalem every day. Maybe on the regular route that you take every morning, you've seen the numbers of unhoused persons multiplying at the end of freeway exit ramps or at busy intersections or on Nicollet and Hennepin Avenue downtown or right down the street here at the Wedge, always with their hand-lettered cardboard signs. And maybe you've seen the same person standing there day after day, week after week, maybe even year after year. And like me, you feel uncomfortable, but you think, I can't meet everybody's need, can I? Or you're busy, or you come up with whatever excuse you can to distract yourself from actually seeing the real needs of the person right there in front of you. I challenge you to do better than me. I challenge you to try, even one time this week or soon, to at least talk with one of those people with the hand-lettered cardboard signs. Buy them a cup of coffee if you want, or a sandwich. Talk to them, or just listen. People need to be seen, to be heard, to be known. And I challenge you to move out of your comfort zone and connect with someone who is an outsider to you, an other. Someone who's on the edge. Maybe someone who's an immigrant who's moved into your neighborhood or who you see every day on the bus. The person in a wheelchair who's struggling with some barrier as they make their way around the city. Or perhaps the only family on your block that are of a different race than you. I challenge you to make a real connection with them. Try it one time. I encourage you. We're not always going to do it. You're going to come up with excuses or be too busy or blah, 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 blah. I get it. Welcome to the human race. Thomas Merton, a Trappist monk of the 20th century, described what life is like. And there's a lot of wisdom in this. This is what he said. He said, you fall down, you get back up. You fall down, you get up. You fall down, you get up. Again and again. Recognize that you're not going to always get it right. But you get up, you keep going. One of my heroes and mentors was a man named Bob Jansen, longtime member of Hennepin, decades-long member, now one of our saints. He passed away 2 years ago. Bob had a philosophy of life, a mantra that he lived by, and I see some of my friends smiling and nodding. They know what's coming. What Bob practiced and shared with the world would have been helpful for me to know and practice to actually see the humanity of the blind beggar that I passed every day. Bob's mantra was, pay attention, or said another way, stay awake. Now, being woke has gotten a bad rap in our culture lately, but what he is reminding us to do is to wake up to the beauty that is within you and all around you, and to the light within you, the same light that is threaded through all things. Thomas Merton called this awareness. He described it as the very awareness of the dynamism of life living itself in us, and aware of itself in us as being the one life that lives in all. Now, if the idea of being awake and aware sounds a little too mystical or woo-woo for you, I've got another way of proposing you think about this. Try thinking of it as knowing deep within you, deep within your heart and soul, that you are a fully loved child of God. Really knowing that in your skin, in your bones. And then remember that the same is true of everyone around you. Everyone around you is a fully loved child of God, possessing the same divine presence, the same light, the kind of light that even a blind man can see. My friends, as you know, this is a world of great need, and some days it feels like the whole world is collapsing. Joseph Campbell, educator and religion writer of the 20th century, said, "When the world seems to be falling apart, the rule is to hang on to your own bliss. It's that light that survives." In other words, hang on to the light within you. Stay awake. The great tennis champion Martina Navratilova was asked what she would do when she was playing a match and she felt lost. What would she do if she felt stuck? Maybe she was losing, or she was uncertain of what strategy to employ. Her answer would be that she would always ask herself two questions, and it's always the same answers every time. The questions are, where are we? Here. And the second question, what time is it? Now. It's always right here, right now. Come back to the present moment. That's what staying awake is. Remember that the light of God that is permeating all things and is within you is permeating the whole universe. And know that that light within you will dim sometimes, or you'll lose it, you'll lose sight of it, you'll falter. But fall down, get up again. Fall down, get up. Fall down, get up. Just begin again. If we lived in a world where all of humanity could really see things as they are, all of us luminous with the same divine light, the same divine presence infusing all of creation, all of our animal and bird friends, all of sea life infused with the same light, illuminated with the light of God's presence, if we could really see that, then I think that all of humanity's problems would be solved. I'm convinced then that our species wouldn't have any issues with climate change. We wouldn't have a disposable culture, an easy throwaway culture, as if there's any such place as away. We wouldn't see ourselves as separate from nature, from creation. We would see all of creation as it is, as one complex, diverse expression of God's handiwork. Friends, there's a lot of brokenness in this world and a lot of needed healing. We have hungry neighbors. There are children in Gaza who are starving. There's a famine in Sudan, a famine in Haiti. There is a lot to be done, and as followers of Jesus, we are the ones that have to do it. So let's go out and help heal the world. Let's go out and be magnificent. Because we are magnificent. We have the divine presence of God planted deep within each of us. Let's share that divine presence, that light and that love, and live lives of compassion and hope and justice building. This is our time, right here, right now. So let's be magnificent. Let's do it. On our way, I invite you to stand and we'll sing our closing hymn.